welcome back to another episode of Paul's Pod. Today we are joined by the self-proclaimed King of Cage Warriors, the one and only Adam Cullen. How you doing, brother?
What's happening? Nice one for having me on.
Nah, bro. Thank you for coming onto my platform. I know we said this should have happened a few times already, but I appreciate you having some patience and getting it done, man. I'm excited to do this. 6-0.
Nice one.
6-0. That's that. You know, it's not just a 6-0, bro. You're 6 first round finishes. No joke.
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it? Like, I don't think anyone really thinks they're going to start the pro career like that, especially when you're getting getting the shout to start on Cage Warriors and that. Do you know what I mean? But it's pretty unheard of, that, isn't it? Six Cage Warriors fights, 6 first round finishes. I'm doing bits, aren't I? But I'm enjoying it.
How hard is it to not get carried away with 6 first round finishes?
To be honest, lad, it's not even like something I think about, like finishing people in the first round. I'm just aggressive anyway. Like, I'm always thinking about finishing, but I'm not arsed. That's the funny thing. I know everyone thinks, get him out the first round and see what happens. Sound, get me out the first round. I only get stronger. One of my biggest weapons is my conditioning. I am so fit. So anyone that wants to go 3 rounds, me, it's sick, because I can't be fit. I know I'll just smash people up. So yeah, my goal is always to finish fights. First doesn't matter, but people just seem to crumble when I put it on them, and they can't make it out the first round. So it's not my fault. It's theirs, isn't it?
Do you think people saying that, oh, well, as long as you get past the first round, it's game over? Do you think that's just, a way of kind of just sliding some shit down your way just to kind of not actually acknowledge how impressive the first 6 wins you've had are?
Yeah, it's jealousy, isn't it? Like, people have all said all kinds. I've had other fighters commenting on me posts, calling me clown and all that, and you just it's because you're jealous and no one's asked about you, because you got a mixed bag of records. Do you know what I mean? Proper few wins and a few losses, and no one's asked about you. It's just jealousy. Oh, he's only got 1 round in him and all that shit. Yeah, okay, we'll see.
And it's also because you're a bit of a loudmouth as well. Like, I don't even mean that in a bad way, but you just got the personality of someone that's got the style to go out there and talk and make the walk. I think that's probably something
It's
else.
because but it's because I know how good I am. Like, it's not like an overconfidence. Like I deserve to be this confident because I put the work in every single day. And other people who aren't as confident and want to call me a loudmouth and all that, that's obviously because they're shit and they don't believe in themselves. You're not going to be a loudmouth, are you, if you've got no confidence and you don't believe in your ability? I do. That's why I do so much talking.
I think the other impressive thing is you're only 24. So theoretically, you're nowhere near your prime and you're absolutely smashing people on this scene. So, when you signed to Cage Wars, I know that obviously you had a few amateur fights under their banner as well, but, making your pro debut in your entire pro career so far being with Cage Wars, was it ever overwhelming when you were making that jump at the early age that you were just straight in? Well, it's Europe's biggest MMA promotion aside from KSW.
No, so the thing was, I actually asked for Cage Warriors. I remember after my last amateur fight, before COVID, Rimmer said to me, what do you want to do? Do you want to have a couple more amateur fights, or do you want to go pro? And I said, the thing is with me, I really want to go pro if I'm fighting on Cage Warriors. I want to fight on a big show. I don't want to go and fight cans on these small little local shows. I'm not bothered about that. I'd rather have hard fights at amateur than fight cans at pro. So I said, I want Cage Warriors. Then obviously the pandemic happened. And the way it happened was they were doing all these COVID shows. And they were doing obviously the bubbles and the testing and all that. And there was loads of local promotions trying to put shows on, but they weren't doing any testing and that. And I remember Rimmer said to me and went, listen, get ready for Cage Warriors and look for a pullout, because these local shows aren't going to happen. If Cage Warriors have got the go-ahead and they're doing the testing and the bubbles and the hotels and all that, there's no chance these other shows are going to go ahead. They're going to get stopped. So get ready. So I just took Rimmer's word for it, and I just said, I'm just gonna pick all kinds of it. Oh shit, sorry.
It's all right.
I've knocked my phone off, lad. One sec. Yeah, so I just said, I just took Rimmer's advice. Obviously, he knows the game. He's been in the sport for a long time. And I just targeted Cage Warriors date. It was like the December lockdown show, December trilogy. And I just got ready for it, and I just thought, if there's a pullout, there's a pullout. So the way that fight actually happened, I remember in the promotion, they were like, Oscar Owensworth's taking this fight on 9 days' notice. And he had. But I had actually taken the fight on 12 days' notice. What it was someone pulled out of a fight, and they came to Rimmer and went, have you got any lightweights ready for 12 days' time? Rimmer asked me, against some kid who was 4-0, and I went, yeah, sound, put me in there, I'm ready. They went back to that kid and went, oh, we've got your fight there, blah, blah, this is him. And he went, nah, actually, I'm injured. So that says it all, doesn't it? So we pulled out. So then Cage Warriors said, for helping us out and jumping on a fight last minute, we're going to now put you on the card, take him off it, and we're going to match you. So that's how Cage Warriors come about for me, basically just being game and being ready. Then after that fight, I remember going into that fight, I was in the back, and Rimmer said to me, if you win this fight, they'll sign you. You know, go out there and finish them and show them why they should sign you. So that was it for me. Then I went out there, put it on him fast, choked him, and I remember just thinking in my head, thinking like, I'm squeezing for a contract there, like make them sign me, and then that was it. I got a 5-fight deal after that, and that's how the road started. But it was basically just being ready. Do you know what I mean? All these people who like can't take fights because they're like, oh, me weight and all that. Well, do you know what I mean? You're never gonna get big fights, are you?
No.
You look at the most of the guys in the UFC, get the opportunity in late notice. If you can't make weight for a regional show, how are you going to make weight for the UFC? You've got to be ready at all times, haven't you?
Do you think being in the mix of all the other guys in the gym, all the other guys that signed to the big promotions, do you think that helps you, kind of already be familiar with what the top scene is like in MMA? Like it was almost like none of it would have been a shock to you because you're always with those guys in the gym every day.
Yeah, definitely. Because I remember as an amateur when I was fighting on Cage Warriors, I remember being in the back before like Molly's title fight, Paddy's title fights, stuff like that. So being in and around, I knew what it was like. So I think a lot of people when they come to like big shows like Cage Warriors, surprised by how professional it is and the lights and like it's mad because everything's done for you. Like the hand wrapper's there, you've got water, and yeah. So I think people are blinded by the lights on big shows like Cage Warriors when you first come on as a professional. But for me, I'd seen all that as an amateur, so going into it, I knew what to expect. And then now, speaking to people like Paddy and Molly who have been in the UFC, all they say to you is it's exactly the same. Like once you've been on one big show, like the UFC don't do much different. And obviously, apart from the production in terms of like the walkouts and having obviously like Bisping there and Joe Rogan and all that, it's all the same stuff. So knowing they've done it, they're like trailblazers for me, aren't they? Like I know I'm on the same path as them. I'm doing the same things in the gym as them every day, and they've told me that the step up and the lights and the production and all that, it's the same. So for me, I know I'm prepared for the UFC.
How much is seeing their rise and their spectacular rise, you know you've known them since before they had their fame, and what does that do to someone like you, seeing what they've accomplished so far?
It just shows that it's a real thing and it can happen. Like I remember when I first got into the sport, that like I remember reading an article and someone had just made the UFC debut and they got £2,000 to show and 2,000 to win. So like it wasn't even really like a career that you could work full time, like being a UFC fighter. But now like they're from the same gym as me. We fought on the same shows before the UFC. I've known them for years, like, and they're doing it and they're like making the big splash, made the jump, famous all over the world, and like they're making the big money in the UFC. It's the path's already written for me. I've just got to follow the same steps as them. So it takes the pressure off. I'm not like leading the charge, am I? I'm just following in their footsteps really.
It's interesting that you say that it takes the pressure off. I would have thought maybe, there'd be not so much the shoes to fill, but I would have thought that obviously, still an impressive task to do what they've done.
Yeah, but the thing is, I always say this: that I'm my biggest critic. Like no one else can put pressure on me because I put all the pressure on myself. I'm so critical of all my performances, all my training sessions. Like the pressure comes from me because I know how good I am and I know how good I'm gonna be. Like so, external pressure getting compared to them, it doesn't bother me because I don't feel like I'm looking for validation off anyone else because I'm so stuck in my own head anyway.
Where did you get that mindset from?
I think I'm just a bit fucked up, lad. I'm not gonna lie to you. Do you know what it is, lad? I'll be honest with you. I'm just obsessed with MMA. I always have been. The minute I found out about it, I become obsessed. I'll sit there and watch like small Polish promotions and like Serbian MMA. Like I watch everything. like all the lads in the gym will go, I've been matched with blah blah, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I've seen like spots his last fight, yeah, blah blah. I'm just into it, and I feel like that obsession and that drive, it's because I just love it. Like I love training, I love getting better, and then I don't love watching me fights back because I watch them back and all I can do is pick them apart. I don't give myself any credit. I'm just watching and going, I've done that, fuck that up, why I've done that, blah blah, because I'm just obsessed with getting better. I don't know where it's come from. I've just always been that way.
How do you envision your journey to the UFC? Because especially if we're talking about the path that people like Paddy and Molly, sorry, not Molly, Paddy and Molly took. There are a lot of guys that, rushed just a UFC at the soonest possible position. That's when I want to get there. But then obviously Paddy made the sensible decision of kind of having the offer there, but knowing that maybe the timing wasn't quite right, and he wanted to give himself some more time to be ready. Like, how do you envision your journey to the UFC going?
I just think about hard fights each time. I just want to be taking a step up and testing myself. The UFC is not something I've really got a time frame on. Like when it comes, I know I'm ready for it. But like, if it comes in one fight, two fights, 10 fights, I'm not really asked. Like, I feel like I'm gonna have the time to experience now because it doesn't really. I feel like it's getting harder to get into the UFC. Basically, like the likes
Oh,
of
definitely,
George and Paul
100%.
Hughes, but them two in previous years, they'd been signed, snapped up on big cards, probably fighting top 15s in the first fight. That doesn't happen anymore. Like you've really got to earn your way and cut your teeth to on the regional scene because there's so much competition because there's so many big shows now. Plus Dana White's Contender Series, plus all these PFLs and that are all popping up. Like the competition is brutal now. So I feel like I'm gonna get that experience in Cage Warriors because still there's people in front of me, isn't it? Like obviously George, I'm not gonna get signed before him, am I? Like he's top of the list. I just see me having tough fights, getting better, getting more experience. Then, like you said before, I'm 24. Like Volkanovski just fought on the weekend. Everyone's going on about how he's in his prime and he's pound for pound and he's a GOAT. He's 34. I've got 10 years before I'm. Do you know what I mean? Like, how good am I going to be in 10 years? I've only been doing this sport for 10 years. Imagine 10 more years as a pro. I'm going to be unstoppable. So, for me, there's no time frame. Just tough fights every time. Test myself every time. And I know I'll get there.
Yeah, I think you touched on the competition that is in MMA now. It's just ridiculous. I think it's we're really seeing the first impact of a generation of younger fighters who have had access to YouTube, have had access to the growth of the UFC and seen it with their own eyes. And it's a new wave of passionate young MMA kids that are coming through. And as that's happened, knowledge has gotten better with. I mean, if you look at the standard of the UFC 20 years ago compared to now, it's fucking like night and day. And that's only just because of a result of how big the sport's grown. I
Yeah.
mean, what's your thoughts on George Hardwick and the rest of the welterweight guys that are in Cage Warriors?
I think George Hardwick's fantastic. To be honest, I've trained with him a few times, and he's very good, and he's very dedicated. That's one thing I noticed about George. He breaks people down, and pre-fight breaks people down. Like he's constantly looking at new techniques, constantly watching fights. He's similar to me, really, where he seems obsessed with the sport, and I am as well. And I think George is very good. And people forget how young George is himself. I think he's only 25 or 26, and he's had like 13 pro fights. Like he's game and talented, but he works hard, and I think he knows like what it takes to get to that next level. Just putting the work in, taking tough fights. And I think he's going to have a very, very successful career. To be honest, I've been saying for a while, I don't know how he's not being signed. Like
Yeah, I know. I
who
mean,
else in Europe?
it's crazy. Like you were saying before, like there are guys that would have been signed up. Paul Hughes would have been snatched up earlier. But like, I mean, you look at someone like Dominic Wooding, who lost his belt in his last fight. But I mean, like the run that he was on, especially before UFC London, I was thinking, mate, it's not a no-brainer that he's going to get signed. And then it just didn't happen. I think,
Because
like you
he's
said,
super entertaining as well.
yeah,
It's the knockouts. You think the one thing that you can put a knock on Paul Hughes for is a few decisions in his last few fights, which everyone knows that the UFC won't finishes. But someone like Dom and someone like, well, especially George, he's got a great record and he's got loads of finishes. Then it becomes like, what else are they looking for? But it just shows that the competition's that rife now that you've really got to stand out from the pack because clearly being 11-1 with 7 finishes isn't good enough still. Mad.
Do you think that will eventually make, your story even more sweeter, knowing that, you entered the UFC at the hardest time possible when, you know, it was impossible to get into the standards that you're fighting in now a few years ago?
Yeah, it might do, but then in 5 years after I've retired, it'll be even harder to get into the UFC. Like the sport's just so new, and there's kids coming through now in our gym, especially. They're like triple-time world champions and they're like 7 or 8. Do you know what I mean? At jiu-jitsu and stuff. Like the sport's huge now. But it's not like it used to be where people had like, oh, I used to box as a kid, and then at 25 think, oh, I'll have a go at that MMA. Like everyone's
Yeah.
doing it from a young age. Like I've been doing MMA as a sport from 15 now. Some of these kids are going to have 10 years MMA experience by the time they're 15. It's just going to get harder and harder, and the sport's going to level up. So yeah, I think it might make it a little bit sweeter, but it won't last long because some of these people coming through behind, it'll be even harder for them again. That's just the way it is.
Why do you think the Northwest specifically is kind of the hub of fighting in MMA in the UK? Like, do you think it's a testament to just, I mean, I lived in Liverpool and we know, Scousers are just born to be fighters, it's a hard city full of hard people. Do you think that is one of the massive factors for the reason and why Liverpool is one of the best places to be at Manchester? Or do you think it's can't fucking speak. Do you think it's anything else?
I think when you're looking at like the cities that are successful MMA, they're also the cities that are successful for boxing. Like people just love fighting sports. Like Liverpool, Manchester, Dublin, Belfast, they just love fighting, and I think it's not a surprise that people love MMA because like they're people whose mums and dads and grandparents were all boxers. So now MMA is off taking over the boxing. People are just moving that way instead. So I just feel like I don't know. Maybe it's like a working class thing, and you know, rough and tumble. People just love it, don't they? People just love fighting in cities like this, and that's why we're producing the top talent in our gym and in other gyms around the northwest.
April 15th is your next fight. Now, you've still not got an opponent yet, or at least it's not been announced. How do you approach fights when you're almost a month out and well, it's almost 2 months now? But like, do you need to have an extensive amount of time to prepare for someone? Like you said, you always got to be ready, to go kind of whenever. And there's an argument of with fighters, when they actually break down a fight, like you said, you study loads of people, you'll break down, all their weaknesses, all their strengths. But then sometimes, I guess, not having the time to do that kind of, you can just focus on your own game so much. Like, how do you approach a fight? Do you approach it from a standpoint where you want to know as much as possible and break it down as much as possible, or do you want to just focus on yourself and what you can do?
Yeah, I feel like that could come at a disadvantage sometimes when you haven't got the time to break people down, but also at the same time they don't have the time to break me down. The other thing is with me at the minute, I've got about 8 minutes of fight footage in the last 3 years.
Mm.
So when I'm breaking someone down a week out, they're also breaking me down a week out. Like it shouldn't really matter that much, but if you're putting the work in constantly and you're constantly looking to improve, it shouldn't really matter. Like I'm working on me every day. I'm thinking about becoming the UFC champion every day. So whether they bring in someone international or whatever, or someone from the UK and they come in last minute to fight, yeah, it shouldn't matter. If you're working to become the UFC champion every day, who cares? They can bring anyone. I'll stop anyone they bring for me.
If you, or rather when you win your next fight, is a fight with George Hardwick next, do you think?
To be honest, people always ask me this all the time, and I always say it's a bit of an awkward one because me and George trained together. But I never even envisioned fighting George because I thought he'd be in the UFC by now. And then surely this time he's going to be in the UFC again. Like surely he stops this kid and he'll be in the UFC. It's never really been on my radar because we're on different trajectories. The guys had like double the professional fights I've had. We're not really at the same. Even though people keep saying, "Oh yeah, you fight for the title, you're gonna fight George," and that we're not really in the same stage of our career, are we?
Yeah.
Really? And and to be honest, George is a good training partner, and we are mates, and his brother as well, Harry. So I can't really see that fight happening purely because I think he'll be in the UFC, and I think he deserves to be in the UFC. But who knows what's going to be next for me? I'm just focusing on this next fight. Hopefully, a tough opponent who's got good experience, and I'm focusing on stopping them.
As you should be. I will just touch on. Okay, let's put this in a perfect world. Okay, so George wins his next fight and he's signed to the UFC, and you smash this kid next. Do you think it's a title shot next? Do you think you're in a position where you almost you deserve the title shot after the run that you've been on?
Who else would deserve it? That's my question. Who would you pick over me? Like to be honest, there's no one's even asked about anyone else at lightweight on Cage Warriors. Like apart from me and George, like name someone who's even fights on the main card apart from us two. No one cares about them, so I think it's inevitable, isn't it? Really.
It is. And finally, just to conclude, what do you think? Like, if you're looking at yourself towards the end of this year, how many fights do you want to have? What are some things that you've got at the back of your mind that by the end of this year you can look back and think, okay, I did what I wanted to do.
This year, 4 fights, big names. I want tough tests. People who fought international, people who've fought other big names. 4 fights, 4 finishes, a Cage Warriors title, maybe a UFC contract or be on the UFC radar. That's my goal. Finish the year 10-0, 10 finishes, huge names on my record and undeniable for going to the UFC in 2024.
Adam Cullen, thank you for your time, brother.
Thanks very much. It's been a good one.
Mate, like I said, big time coming. I'm glad that we've got this done. I can always say thank you for coming onto my platform, man. You're a fucking sick guy. The future is very bright for you. I have no doubt that you'll be in the UFC, whether that's by the end of this year or next year. It's just a matter of time. So obviously, please follow Adam. I'll make sure I put all of his social links in the bio. People can find you. What's your Instagram?
I think it's Adam_Cullen1.
Perfect. And make sure you tune in to UFC Fight Pass on April 15th.
Yeah.
Have you got any other remarks? Oh, 15th of April. My bad. Sorry.
Yeah. If you love memes and you love people getting their head smashed in, give me a follow and make sure you watch me next fight. Simple as.
Your Instagram is pretty entertaining. I will give you that. It's never boring.
Nice one, lad. Nice one. I'm on the talkie now as well. I'm on the TikTok and flying on there now as well, making the memes. So get on me on that as well.
Get on it. Thank you for your time, brother.
Nice one, lad.